November the 11th, 1918, and the guns fell silent on the Western Front. In the East, it was a remarkable day. New and old countries, including Poland, emerged from the carnage. Poland was back in business after 123 years of partition and occupation. Join me, Jan Darasz, for How We Got Here.
The partitions by the Kingdom of Prussia, the Russian Empire and the Habsburg Empire effaced Poland from the world's map for 123 years. But regardless of the harsh winter of attempted Germanization and Russification, Polish culture, ideals and spirit hibernated in the hearts and minds of Polish diasporas abroad, as well as the Poles who continued to live in the forefathers' land. But saying that Poles toiled away their lives under foreign yoke while indulging in pipe dreams of freedom would be false. The Poles gave their best shots at regaining their independence in a number of 19th century uprisings, most notably the November Uprising of 1830–31 and January Uprising of 1863–1864. Those attempts, however, fizzled out. The havoc of World War I turned out to be the rippest time for Poles to rise up once again. Although as early as in November 1916, Germany and Austria guaranteed the establishment of a puppet kingdom of Poland, Poles would not be content with but a mere semblance of independence. Neither would US President Woodrow Wilson, who made the erection of an independent Polish state with a free and secure access to the sea part of his peace plan to end World War I. On October 7, 1918, Poland's Regency Council proclaimed the country's independence, but factual sovereignty would return only with the Brigadier Józef Piłsudski, a seasoned Polish military officer, organizer of pro-independence guerrilla and a socialist revolutionary. Piłsudski, having been held captive in Magdeburg for a time, would make a comeback to Warsaw on November 10 amidst Polish servicemen and people of Warsaw disarming German soldiers still present in the city. The day after, on November 11th, the Regency Council transferred all powers to Piłsudski, making him de facto a leader of the country, a fact that has been celebrated as a symbolic moment of Poland regaining its independence. Several days later, Piłsudski issued a dispatch and Poland returned to world maps. This was confirmed at the Paris Peace Conference by two other men who helped it all happen, Roman Dmowski and Ignacy Paderewski. It is their strive and that of hundreds of thousands of other Poles that is paid tribute to each year on November 11 in various festivities across Poland, including the Independence March in Warsaw.
I'm delighted to welcome our guest today, Alina Nowobilska, an independent historian based here in Warsaw. Welcome once more.
Thank you so much for inviting me today.
Great to have you once more on the programme. You had to fight your way through crowds today. Describe to us the impression of the March of Independence to celebrate Poland's Independence Day.
I've got to say, it was incredible seeing all of these flags everywhere, because I came in a taxi, and the taxi obviously had to drop me off halfway because we couldn't get through because of the barricades, but he dropped me off, and on the way you saw all of these flags, and then as you got close to the centre, there was even more Polish flags, and young people and children and families, and mothers holding the hands of their 3-4-year-old children, walking up hills and walking up into, there's a really beautiful park up in Powiśle, so it was crazy seeing, so many Polish flags in one place. And not only Polish flags, I came across a couple of American flags. There was one from a Kashubian flag, a Silesian flag, so kind of this whole Polish unity of different types of Poles, if that makes sense, kind of all gathering together. And it was a very interesting experience having to fight through. The
actual occasion itself is relatively new. Post-communist, you mentioned before that it was only adopted as a national day in 1937.
Yeah, because this is it. It was from sorry to interrupt you, but from 1937, between 18 and 37, it was just a military thing. It was just celebrated by the military. So from 1937, it was adopted as a country thing. So between 37 and 39, how many Independence Days did we really get before the Germans invaded?
Yes. Less than a handful as well.
Exactly.
And what's the actual significance? It obviously has this kind of very controversial in some quarters about being taken over by the far right, or that kind of political manipulation or political acceptance by different factions. Has that always been the case, do you think, with Polish patriotism, that everybody can have? It's a kind of big exchange of opinions, or is it? Are you aware that it's just one strand of Polish opinion, that it's a patriotic thing?
It's a really Western way of thinking it, that it's just been taken over by the far right, because our far right's not the same as America, for example, for the same as Germany. You know, and being a Polish patriot in American terms means you're instantly far right. You know, I am politically in the middle. But I'm still a Polish patriot. I still love my country. I would, if I wasn't here right now, I would be out there marching along with my fellow Poles. But it's because I love my history. I was taught to love this from a young child, as many Poles were. Yes. So,
likewise.
Do you know what? In this march, everybody is involved. And this is what people in the West only focus on, is that it's a far-right march. That's it. But if you look at it, there's young children, there's people, there's grandmothers. Everybody from all walks of life have come from the villages, from the cities, different political factions. Yeah, do you know what? The far-right do exist. They're usually, they're shoved to the back where nobody's really going to see them. So, but everybody has a right to march, even if you are far right at the end of the day, however much some of us may not want that. Everybody has a right to do, but we're a free country, right?
Yes, that's what we fight for.
Exactly.
Let's go back to November the 11th, 1918, this idea of armistice, the guns fell silent on the Western Front, and it seemed to me that great empires had won in the East and then collapsed, leaving Poland and other Eastern European countries, just leaving them high and dry almost.
Kind of floating,
yeah.
Really, in a way. I think it's a really important day. I mean, Piłsudski becomes head of the armed forces, which in a way kind of solidifies Poland's independence, if you want to look at it that way. But realistically, the 11th isn't as an important day as the 10th is the day before. That is the day.
So why is that?
Oh, say we're going to bring in my anecdote, and I love this anecdote of Piłsudski. So just tiny 2 steps going backwards. Piłsudski never saw a free Poland. 123 years of occupation under 3 great empires. Poles couldn't speak their own languages. Anything to do with Poland, any books, any literature, everything was banned. So the whole Polish culture was theoretically wiped out, but it wasn't quite wiped out because people spoke it at home. And as Piłsudski's mother, I think I've said this a couple of times in previous episodes that we've chatted about, where Piłsudski's mother was highly influential in his life. And Piłsudski has gone, he's 50-something by this stage, 50-something years of no free Poland. He arrives to Warsaw on the 10th of November, 1918, to crowds of people. When I mean crowds, I mean what we're seeing now on the march, nothing compared to what he arrived to. And it's that one moment where he takes a step from the train to free Polish land. And it is one of the most powerful moments, I think, in history, where this man who has fought, who has gone through being exiled to Siberia, who has fought for the rights of freedom, who got arrested, who's gone through so many hardships, has finally stepped onto this land of free Poland. And there's no words to be able to describe this moment. And that, for me, is the most important part about this. Poland is free.
And you're fighting, not just Piłsudski, but Dmowski, Paderewski, a whole host of other activists are essentially fighting for a Poland that they only know about from the imagination, from a historical imagination. It's not existed since 1795, and they have this image of almost a romanticized image of Poland, and that's what comes to be. And he, on the 11th, he telegraphs the Western powers that Poland is back. What's the reaction? What's the reaction of the Western powers to this, and what is the reaction of the Polish people? You mentioned this huge greeting crowd to greet it. Was it for the crowds, for the Poles present? Was it shock, surprise, bewilderment?
Euphoric. I think that's the only word you can describe. Euphoric. let's start with the Poles before we start with the Western powers. I mean, it was this moment that, I mean, a lot of those people in the streets hadn't seen a free, actually most of them didn't see a free Poland, I think, unless you're over 123 years old, you know, looking at...
A couple of those around.
But they've never seen a free Poland, so this moment for them to be able to speak their language, to be able to read their books, to educate themselves in Polish, and a lot of them may have not had that chance to be able to speak Polish, so they're finally being able to gain their identity back. That is a really important thing for them. So in Poland, I think it's a euphoric sort of expression and idea that, you know, finally we can be ourselves at the end of the day. Western powers, well, they didn't really recognise Poland and Polish independence for a little while, not until really America did at the end of the day. Yes. So once America had really identified and said that Poland is a free nation state.
President Wilson's...
which is why we have a Wilson Square here in Warsaw, alongside, funny enough, Reagan is another big supporter of Poland, but that's a whole other different time period. But yeah, so he does declare, especially in the Paris Peace Conference, that's really important in 1919, and Poland finally becomes Poland, and it took, 123 years of fighting to do so.
What are the immediate problems that Poland has to face? Presumably cobbling together an army to safeguard its borders against the Bolsheviks.
That is funny enough.
3 different traditions.
So Poland you're starting from the ground up. Like, there is nothing. There is no government, there is no economy, there is no army, there's nothing. So Poland has to literally, and Paul Paderewski, who ends up going over to America, because I think it just becomes too much for him at the end of the day. It's a huge responsibility to be able to build up a nation from nothing. So we've got the threat of Germany from the west and the Bolsheviks from the east, obviously. We then come upon the Polish Bolshevik War, the Silesian uprisings, and the Greater Poland uprisings as well. So multiple uprisings happening post-1918 and obviously invasions. So Poland needs to build something. Now, you've got people that were trained in Russia, you got people that were trained in the Austrian army, you got people that were trained in the German army. Lots of different military tactics, different weapons. Having to train all different types of people in one becomes very complicated. But at the end of the day, they managed to do it. And they managed, obviously, we know the miracle on the River Vistula, they managed to win the Bolshevik War. The Silesian uprisings, that's a whole other kettle of fish, as well as the other uprisings. But Poland having to build from the ground up, a very, very big job, and I would not want to be that person who had to do it.
Yeah, when you read about that post-war, immediate post-war period, you read about the emergence of these civil society, of these self-help organisations, citizens getting together, because the state was weak. So they had to, and that's a remarkable period in Polish history, isn't it, where they emerged from the 3 Austrian, German and Russian partitions and get together and form credit unions, self-help groups, all that sort of thing.
And politics becomes I think it becomes more angrier than politics is today, really, to be honest. Because, again, we have that argument between Dmowski and Piłsudski, which, I mean, it's been there.
Yes, could you outline to us these 2 strands of Polish political philosophy? Piłsudski on the one side, Roman Dmowski on the other.
It was very simple. Dmowski tends to lead to the right, and Piłsudski more to the left. Piłsudski believed in a Poland for everybody. He's trying to put Poland together at the end of the day, to make everybody stick together. We have different backgrounds, we have different religions, and to this day I really believe in what Piłsudski believed in at that point, was Poland is for everyone. If you're Polish, it doesn't matter if you're Jewish, Muslim, Catholic, you know, work in the field or are a mayor of a town.
So it's harking back to the old Polish-Lithuanian
Commonwealth, yeah. It's that ideology, really, that if you're Polish, that's the end of it. There's no argument there. But throwing a little anecdote here about Piłsudski and Dmowski, just to make them, like we were talking about beforehand, to make them a little bit more human. So Piłsudski's first wife was eyed up by Dmowski, and she actually ended up going with Piłsudski over Dmowski. So was there a love rival there? Is there one of the reasons why they didn't like each other? You know, I'd like to think there is.
Personal stuff is always important, isn't it?
I think there is, when it comes down to being a little bit more human about it, rather than just the politics and the jealousy. And
they're not machines, after all, are they? They're human beings.
This is it. We're humans at the end of the day. We have emotions, and it's what makes us what we are, really. The Poland that emerged and that was fought for and built in the 1920s, which Poland was that? Was that leaning towards Dmowski's idea of an ethnic Poland, or were there still these two traditions fighting for supremacy? Oh, there was constant fighting for supremacy. I think Poland was quite unstable for a very long time. Even after the Riga Treaty in 1923, which established the borders at the end of the day, Poland was still fighting internally. We had an assassination as well at some point, and Piłsudski, we can say he became a dictator at the end, but I think he was the man for the time, because Poland was so unstable, and it had the chance of falling apart again and being taken over by Germany and Russia, or the Bolsheviks at that point, that there was that risk. So without him stepping in and being able to pull Poland back together, I think we would have ended up back under occupation.
Yes, I think too often we stress the negative aspects, but this idea of taking a state and cobbling it together, an amazing story. Alina Nowobilska, thank you very much for coming on to the programme.
Thank you so much.
That's all we have time for today. Do enjoy the 11th of November, Polish National Day, wherever you are, but join us again for How We Got Here.